Hey, this is Beat Motel, and we're going to be talking about the new wave of pretty heavy metal. We're going to talk about Billy Idol being Davros in Doctor Who. We're going to talk about Status Quo the musical, and finally, we're going to talk about Michael Crawford being the new singer of Queen. Let's go! By the time it had actually, burst, I think everyone could agree that we'd had a lovely old time. You're listening to the Beat Motel podcast, and we need to warn you that we like to use words like fuck, shit, and syndicalist, bunty scrutux, angry flap, and filth biscuits, and we don't often bleep those words out, apart from because we're not complete animals. But if you understand that and you like music, then listen on. Hey, you're back with Beat Motel, and Dr. Sam is off doing something else this week, so we have a very special guest. We have Mr. Daz Hewitt. Daz, say hello.
Hello, Andrew.
So Daz and I have been bandmates before, and we've known each other through the Ipswich music scene for many, many, many years. So I thought you'd be a fun person to get along, because when we were in a band together, we drove places and talked, and that appeared to work. So I thought we've got previous experience.
We spent a fair bit of time together, and
you make it sound really romantic.
For me, it was.
Excellent. So,
but I mean, along those lines, I mean, you are one of those people. There's two or three of you who I'm particularly fond of for what you do for the Ipswich music scene, and you're very much one of those people who I'm quite in awe of, I must admit.
You're making my glasses steam up. Right, so we start each show with a riff of the week. So this is just a song that you've got stuck in your head, or just whatever you want to talk about, or whatever. And here is Daz's riff of the week. So, Mr. Daz, who was that and what was the track?
Well, how about that? That is a piece of music called Apocalypse in 9/8 by Genesis. It's part of a 23-minute song called Supper's Ready on the Foxtrot album. I was trying to recall it might be 1973, but one of their very early albums.
Ooh, so close. 1972. Now,
72.
Unfortunately, for kind of copyright reasons, we can only play 30 seconds of anything that we play on Beat Motel.
So not the full 23 minutes.
No, the podcast would be really easy to do. If, like, just play loads of prog for ages, and then we haven't got to go to the effort of actually talking or anything.
No, I thought it was just going to be hello, 23 minutes of music, and goodbye.
Or maybe in the future it will be when I'm kind of more tired and old. So yeah, finding a 30-second clip in the middle of a 23-minute track that I don't know was a challenge. So I just thought I'll find something that's got a nice bit of organ on it, and that bass sounds great.
Yeah, well done you for finding it. Yeah, Genesis around that period. Now I kind of done things back to front. In the 80s, I became a fan of Marillion. Not particularly liked at the time by a lot of Genesis fans. But it was through Marillion that I kind of went backwards and found early Genesis. And that song and that pace of that song in particular, I just think it's got such a foreboding presence about it. So that's why I chose that one.
It's kind of good. It's got like an awkwardness because it's not in, well, I'm guessing it's in 9/8 rather than 4/4, which makes it sort of ominous. That is just what you just said, isn't it? Makes it foreboding,
ominous, all of those things. Yes,
slightly uncomfortable. Which when I think of Genesis, having grown up with my first exposure to Genesis being the weird later end game Genesis, which was Phil Collins singing about not being able to dance and all that kind of stuff. When I hear proper Genesis, it's always a real shock. It's always a real surprise. There's a lot going on in there.
There is. I have, just to touch on what you said there, I've kind of softened to 80s, 90s Genesis in more recent times. there was so much rubbish around then.
We were dealing with a lot of shit. There was a lot of crap
We really
floating
were.
about.
And Genesis, Phil Collins, very much part of that. I listen back to it now almost with a sense of fondness, and I do admire Phil Collins. I mean, brilliant, brilliant drummer. He really is. And he could sing, there's no doubt about that. He could write songs, very talented. So it's almost I've got a good friend, and he he can't play anything, he doesn't sing. But for that reason, he admires everybody who does whatever, Stock Aitken Waterman, whatever it might be. You know, he'll make the effort to try to understand it. He realizes he can't do it himself. However bad it might be on the surface, there is some kind of talent there, whatever it is. So I respect him for that, and I've tried to look at some rubbish music from a different point of view.
Do you know, it's a really interesting point. I watched, there's a YouTube channel I like called Trash Theory, and they do sort of little 40-minute long documentaries about bands and about music. And we watched one about Take That last night, and I'm too old now to say, oh, I hate that, it's shit, it's a boy band, so it's shit. With any music, I don't think there is such a thing as shit music. But I didn't realise just how involved Gary Barlow was with the songwriting. So some of their big Take That hits, there's demos of him when he was 15, just in 1987, playing them on a piano. I had absolutely no idea.
No, same here. And in all honesty, I think the only way I found out was recently, because I had to go and see this Robbie Williams film that's on at the moment.
Oh, you've seen it, the monkey one?
The monkey one, yeah. It wasn't my choice. It's part of my job to go and do things like that. So I went to see it, and it's not a good film. I think they've tried to...
I thought you were going to come and say the complete opposite there. I thought you were going to say it completely changed my mind about Robbie Williams. But
Not at all. Not at all. I think the funny thing, I think there is a decent story in there about Take That and Robbie Williams, but it's like they've tried to do it in an artistic, almost in a Pink Floyd The Wall type way, and it doesn't work.
Blimey.
It just does not work. So it comes over as almost pantomime. But yeah, it does kind of touch on how involved Gary Barlow was in the songwriting of those hits. And I'm going to liken that to the Bee Gees. Growing up, I didn't like the Bee Gees. But now, completely changed now. And their songwriting is so good. So good.
I think because we both come from a similar music background in a way, I mean, you're obviously more prog than I've been, but because we came from the outsider part of the music scene, when you're young, you're kind of programmed to hate anything that isn't in part of your tribe, or to hate anything that's had success, which is kind of the dumbest thing ever. So like, I never listened to Led Zeppelin until I was properly until I was in my early 20s. There's metal I never listened to until, well, only a few years ago, really, because I just dismissed the whole bloody lot. But there's an awful lot of pop out there, which is very, very, very fucking good, isn't there?
There really is. And there is an art to it, I think, to find a really good pop song, which will last for decades. You know, there's definitely an art to that.
How do you feel about Elton John?
Okay, so what I do, and there's recently it's been Elton John, David Bowie, a few others who I can't recall off the top of my head. But what I tend to do nowadays is I will listen to these artists who have been around for a long, long time in chronological order. So I will go right back to the beginning of their career, first album, and kind of listen through the years, I suppose, as to how and when their sound changes and what my thoughts are on that. So with Elton John, what a huge talent he had in the 60s even. And he very much became a pop star. With Bernie Taupin, a lot of good songwriting going on there, and played brilliantly.
So speaking of biopics, have you seen Rocket Man, the Elton John biopic?
I have.
What did you make of that?
I probably shouldn't compare it, but it came out round about the same time as Bohemian Rhapsody.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I much preferred.
It's probably
really unfair to compare the two.
Very different stories, because Boho or Bohemian Rhapsody, they were doing I think a kind of a Disneyfied version of Queen. It was quite polite. They sort of hinted at a few bits of rare behaviour.
Yeah.
But the Elton John film was quite brutally honest, especially around addiction and some of those kind of more difficult topics. So no, I can't compare the two at all.
Yeah, he certainly had his demons, didn't he? He's had a bit of a hard time over the years. I think if I met him, I'd be really interested. If I was to meet him, which Elton John would I meet? Would it be the sort of friendly, flamboyant Elton John, or would it be that almost... I think he can come over quite nasty and mean and bitchy sometimes, from what I've heard. So I'd really like to meet and like the likable Elton John.
See, I couldn't call it then. I thought you might say you'd want to meet the irascible, grumpy Elton John.
No, not at all. Not at all.
Was it called Tempers, Tantrums, and Tiaras?
Yeah. Yeah. That rings a bell. I'm not sure I ever saw any of that, but certainly rings a bell. And that kind of, tantrums sums him up. That's the picture I have of him. But I know that he does a lot of good work for charity, very generous, and he obviously has friends, so I'm sure there is a very nice side to him.
We're really bringing out the shocking kind of musical facts here. If anyone's listening to this to kind of get the real dirt on music, we have to reveal that Elton John probably has friends.
I reckon he does.
Yeah.
He probably went through a stage where he didn't have so many, but no, I mean, he probably does have proper friends rather than the hangers-on. I'm sure there are people who like him for who he is, which is success. Right, you can't ask for more than that.
Let's go through a list of other pop stars who might have friends.
Madonna?
She might have friends who genuinely like her. Going back to the Bee Gees, I don't really know their story that well. I know they're Australian, and I know they came to the UK, and there's New York mining disaster, which is completely different to all the disco stuff, but then they suddenly went disco, and I'd love to know if that was their record label going, look, this is the latest thing, we own your souls, do it, or whether Barry Gibb and his brothers actually kind of went, we like this thing, this is something that we can give a unique voice to. Which do you think it was?
I think it was the latter. I haven't done a lot of research on the Bee Gees, but I think their first TV appearance was back in the late 50s as a kind of harmony three-piece on some Australian TV show.
Wow.
Very popular in the late 60s. More of a like New York mining disaster, that kind of acoustic sound with strings, brilliant harmonies. I get the picture. It was Barry Gibb who thought, because of his falsetto voice, he can make something out of this disco sound that was emerging.
We kind of defined a big chunk of it, because you can almost split my ignorant kind of knowledge of disco. You can almost split it between the very funky, which is the Bee Gees, and it's all funky, but then the sort of the slightly more Sunday afternoon with the relatives around side of it, which Nile Rodgers was responsible for creating.
Chic and the like. I
don't know if it's because I'm getting
older, but again, I mean, being from where we came, like you said, at the outsider groups and disco and stuff when we were younger, I like a bit of disco now. I like some of that funk and disco.
Oh God, some funk stuff, definitely really into that. It's filthy. A lot of it's a lot filthy. I think Bee Gees was kind of quite a clean one, but when I was a kid, I just couldn't get past that falsetto vocal. It seemed so utterly bizarre. And yet I was also listening to Led Zeppelin, which had, Led Zeppelin, they used the vari-speed vocals. So in the studio, they slowed down the whole tape with all the instruments. Robert Plant sings, and they put it back to normal to make him proper pinky and perky. So,
do you think, as well as music, that image has something to do with it? I mean, Kenny Everett would do his Bee Gees thing, wouldn't he, with the big hair and big teeth? And
Did he? I don't remember Kenny Everett. We were a BBC household more than ITV.
Okay. But they obviously had their image, which it wouldn't have been popular with the people like us who were more into that outside of music, I'm sure. So maybe through ignorance we just didn't listen, or maybe we weren't knowledgeable at the time enough to listen a little bit deeper.
I think it's a shame. I mean, kids these days aren't like this. I've got a teenager, as you know, and they're not tribal with music now. Her music taste is incredibly broad, because we were very locked in, because that's how you knew who your friends were.
Mm-hmm.
That's who, if you went to school or out to gigs or whatever, you could identify people. All right, they've got that band T-shirt on, or I know they listen to that, so that automatically means we're going to be friends.
And I would, admittedly, I was quite snobbish about it, and I would look down on the people who were listening to chart music when I was 15 years old or so. You know, really,
I just thought they were morons. I thought they were sheep.
Yeah, absolute disdain for them.
It's funny saying it. It's funny saying it back, but I'm quite vitriolic. Quite kind of like, of course, because I was a teenager and I didn't have the skill to actually talk to any of these people about anything. But in the privacy of my own bedroom, I used to scowl about them something wrong.
Oh yes.
Stand behind people in the queue in Woolworths while I was buying like some obscure 7-inch or something, and if someone was buying Kylie, I'd be sat there, no expression on my face, but in my head I'd be going, "Yeah, fuck it, what are you doing here?" And as far as I was concerned, they were responsible for everything that had gone wrong in the world because they'd chosen to buy a Kylie single.
I went through a stage in the kind of mid to late 80s, I suppose, when heavy metal was my thing, especially the new wave of British heavy metal. New wave of pretty heavy metal, that came a little bit later. that was
the new wave of pretty heavy
likes.
metal. Right, I need to write that down. I haven't got a pen, but I want to keep that phrase.
In the meantime, it was Saxon and Iron Maiden and that sort of thing for me. And I bought, at about 15 years old, I went to town and I bought myself a Prince LP. And I was so ashamed. And I was sitting on the bus and I was really hoping that nobody would see through the bag or it would drop out. And somebody would...
Like, that would have been worse than, like, Grot Mag falling out. Grot Mag falling out on the bus. You'd be like, oh, well, that's happened. Prince album. You're like, oh, the shame.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, what a supremely talented guy he was. But
which album was it? Do you remember?
The what, sorry?
Do you remember which Prince album it was?
Okay, so we're talking sort of mid to late 80s. So maybe it might even have been the Batman thing that he done.
That's that phrase, when you say the Batman thing that Prince did, it's one of those things where I kind of go, shit, yeah, that happened. That happened, didn't it? So
it was somewhere between Purple Rain. I don't think unless I bought it second hand, it might have been Purple Rain because that was 84, I think. So maybe a little bit too early for me. But sometime between then and Bat Dance album.
Oh, whoops! I just hit the microphone. That Dance album. Just found out the Bee Gees, they formed in 1958.
That's incredible, isn't it?
That's kind of mind blowing. So when they were doing the disco in mid 70s, early 70s,
probably mid to late 70s, I think.
There's that's 20 odd years between the two things. So they've been going a long time. We always kind of think of these megastars as just popping out of nowhere, but that's not really what happened, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, they were, like I said, end of the 60s. They were very popular and were beginning to regularly kind of beat the Beatles as being the most popular songwriters of the day and that sort of thing.
I had no idea they were that big. We are 19 minutes in and we haven't even mentioned the theme for this episode yet, so we ought to crack on to that.
Okay.
So the theme, I need to write a better title because the title I've got at the moment is Bands Who Should Reform and Bands Who Shouldn't Have Bothered. So I think I need a snappier title than that, but we've done something interesting with this. And I haven't played my riff of the week yet. Oh, bloody hell.
Let's hear it.
Right, 20 minutes in, haven't done riff of the week. Here we go. I need to press this button. Do you want to have a guess at who that is? I mean, you're not going to get it.
When it started up, I was really hoping it was going to be maybe a industrial metal version of You Should Be Dancing or something like that by the Bee Gees, but it obviously isn't.
I love the fact that the band who this is are going to see this. I mean, they will almost definitely see
great.
it. And no, actually, I've not dropped you. I think that's really cool. It's a band who I'll admit I hadn't heard until last night. They're an Ipswich band, and they're called Dude Smell. I'm not sure about the name, but that's none of my business. They choose their own name. It's certainly memorable. But they contacted me and said, would I mind talking about this single, which they've released yesterday. What's the date today? The today's the 29th of Jan, so it came out Tuesday the 28th. God, that took too long for me to figure out. And I know they've played around town a lot, and I know I've got friends who really rate them, but I was pleasantly surprised by that. That's a stonking bit of production. That's really thumpy. I like that.
It really, I mean, with these headphones on, sounded massive, sounded really good. So, well done, guys.
Well done, Dude Smell.
Well done, Dude Smell.
I also like that. There's something about it. There's sort of a vibe in music the last few years of people being a bit more willing to say something again. I mean, it's always been there in punk, it's not gone away. But there's bands at the moment like, have you heard the Lambrini Girls?
Oh, would they have played in Stowmarket at some point?
Oh, God, they might have done.
I have heard of them.
Not a local band. They played Brighton the Corners. They played Ipswich Festival last year.
I've certainly seen them advertised.
And they get a lot of play on Six Music. And
okay,
I'm not a fan.
Okay,
they do the whole ACAB chanting at gigs. I saw them in Ipswich. And a lot of it is, I don't like this. I don't like that. I don't like this. And that kind of posturing. Whereas bands like Dude Smell, I have no idea. I have no idea what they're singing about at all. And I like that. There's a lyric there about.
Sorry, with the Lambrini Girls there, it sounds like they might be doing an impression of Elton John in one of his tantrums.
What, ACAB?
I don't like this, and I don't like this.
Blimey. Yeah, so Dude Smell, nice one. I'm looking forward to seeing you live. I think they ought to let me do a techno remix of that. I'd like to see that happen.
Yeah.
Right, so let's move on to the actual theme now. So the theme, bands who should reform and bands who shouldn't have bothered. So we've got 4 choices each, and this is your first choice, Daz. There's some confusion I have. For one thing, this is a choice that when you gave it to me, I had no idea who it was. When I put it on, I was like, yeah, this is a Daz choice. This is absolutely a Daz choice. So do you want to tell us who it is?
Yes, and I'm not surprised that you had no idea about it. They're called the United States of America. They released one album in 1968, and that was it. And that was all they done. And there is so... I tried to find out what I could about this band, and there is very, very little about them.
The name of them is impossible to Google. They're called the United States of America. Like, what's your jumping in point there?
Yeah, I've done the same. I Googled them. I put United States of America band to try to narrow it down a little bit.
Wise man.
But most searches came up with the other lot, the presidents of the United States of America. But this is what I know about them. It started or formed by somebody called Joseph Bird.
Mm-hmm.
He was in a relationship with somebody called Dorothy Moskowitz. They separated, but still recorded this one album together.
Oh, they did a Fleetwood Mac, did they?
They did, yeah. And then, like I say, that was it. That's all they'd done. I'd done a bit of research on Joseph Bird. He later, I am reading this because I copied it down this morning. He later wrote some TV ads and theme tunes, and a couple of sort of minor film scores. One of the most interesting things I could find about him is that he developed noises and sounds for Mattel toys,
Oh wow,
which I thought
that's
was quite
cool.
interesting.
I like that. That's the sort of CV I want to pop off this mortal coil with, kind of like stuff, work. Invented a new type of popping candy. You want an
Yeah,
outlier. You want one thing that makes people stop and go, "What?" when they're reading your funeral program. What's it called?
funeral program. Yes, that's what it's called.
We'll leave it as that. Invented noises for Mattel. That's awesome.
That's a great little fact about him. Then he spent a long time being a university teacher.
For some reason, I thought you were going to say in a foreign prison or something.
You say that he was quite openly communist, which
Okay,
in America,
not easy in
the late
America.
No, exactly. Dorothy Moskowitz, she joined. You're probably aware of Country Joe and the Fish.
Name rings a bell.
Okay. So after Country Joe and the Fish had finished, he put another band together called Country Joe's All Stars, and she sang with them for a while.
I say.
But, excuse me, for one album, it's very, very experimental for its time. Electronic sounds and all sorts of things coming in and out. And they're both still alive, in their 80s. They've never reformed, never performed together again. But I just think at this age and with the technology available now, what could they do?
Anything they want. I mean,
Anything they want.
I'm looking at it and saying they extensively use synthesizers. This is 1969, and synthesizers were theoretically about from like
Expensive.
the 1930s. But
a Moog was like £20,000 or something like that.
Well, there was only like 3 in the UK, I think. George Harrison had one, and that was I can't remember who the others were. But
was it King Crimson?
Oh, possibly. Yeah, that would make sense, wouldn't it? But then the Mini Moog came out.
I think they might have sold one to. They might even have sold, because I think they had 2 copies. If it is King Crimson, I might be completely making things up now.
Good.
But I think Robert Fripp might have had a couple, and he sold one to Tony Banks of Genesis. And if that's not the truth, it's somewhere near the truth.
If it's not the truth, it sounds like it should be. It sounds plausible enough to be entertaining, doesn't it? No, I get this. So, I think you've kind of made it clear. Out of the 2 choices of whether it's a band that should reform or shouldn't have bothered, I think it's probably going to be a band that would like to see reform.
I'm glad you have that point of view.
I think we ought to start a GoFundMe or a Kickstarter or whatever millennials do these days.
Yeah, we'll get them down the old smokehouse.
Yeah, exactly. Right then, so this is my first choice, and you'll have to guess whether I want this band to reform or I wish they hadn't.
Really proud of, I'm quite aware it makes me a knob. The state they're in at the moment is a mess, but there is something I have to confess. I love trains. I love trains. They ease my pace, so much so I give them names.
Seeing the smile go across your face then was absolutely...
I was so glad you chose that, and they were considered for my list as well.
Oh, really? Right, you need to say who they are.
Well, that's obviously the Big. I've got no doubt that you would like to see them reform.
Absolutely. We talk about them quite a lot on this podcast. We've done 116 episodes, and I've probably mentioned Ed Rome or the Big 10 or 15 times. I think
what an enormous talent Ed is.
Phenomenal.
He has his own studio now, works with some really, really big people, and I'm so glad for him. And I've got a confession. I had so many good nights watching and playing with the Big as part of another band. just some of the best nights that I ever had were those gig nights at the Steamboat or Drum and Monkey sometimes, with the Big and the Rejects as well. They're probably worth a mention.
Yeah, the Rejects. I chose the Big pipped the Rejects to the post. I can't really remember many Rejects songs. Obviously, we both know. I've forgotten his name.
Doozer.
First time I saw him playing with the Rejects, he was pissing with sweat because he'd done loads of acid. And this is in a tiny little pub in Ipswich. It was quite a remarkable thing. But the reason I chose this band and why I would want them to reform is they're one of the bands who I was stupid and didn't get it at the time. You know, we're talking about being tribal. I had this whole thing of not liking ska, which is ridiculous. It's like saying you've got legs but you don't like walking. It's like, it's ska. Like, how can you hate it? Unless it's that weird National Front style ska.
Oh, yes.
But the Big, saw them so many times in Ipswich and knew the band members. You know, knew Ed well enough that the last time they played the Steamboat, he invited me down to say hello. I couldn't go to the gig, but I went down to have a pint with him and have a chat, even though I wasn't going to be there for the gig. So, you know, we weren't busy mates, but I think he was
such a lovely bloke.
He was everyone's friend. He is an amazing person. But I just didn't get ska. And I've told this story before, so I won't go into great depth. When I saw him that night, he gave me a copy of Whatever Makes You Happy. And first disc, double album. The first one is the album. It's the ska album. The second disc is most of the same songs, but all done in a myriad of different musical styles. And that absolutely blew me away. So you're talking about getting into music backward. I got into the big ska music because of this. I still think is one of the most incredible musical feats that's ever been accomplished. To take your own songs and go, right, this one's going to be blues, this one's going to be rock, this just wow. And then they split up. And I never got to see them again. By the time I was listening to their two albums they had at the time, Tears at the Dover and Whatever Makes You Happy, to the point that family members were asking me to stop playing them so often, I lost the opportunity to see them live, and I've never got it. I never did it.
I think that shines through just how talented Ed is at songwriting, that of all the different styles that he put on there, all good. You know, they work in all of the styles that he chose to do. And I can't remember which song it was, but his production skills as well. And then there was one of the songs that he done like a 1950s blues type recording with harmonica and everything. And it genuinely sounds like it was recorded in the 1950s. And I think if anybody heard it and didn't know anything about Ed or the Big, they would say it was a 1950s recording. Yeah. It just sounded so authentic.
It's remarkable. I've got a friend called Stuart Bowditch who's been on here as a co-host, and I know you've definitely met him, Daz, at one of the noise nights. He goes under the name Diacritical Mark at the moment, and he's good friends with Ed, and he heard a podcast where we talked about that production before, and he said, no, Ed researched which microphones to use, how to set the studio up, every tiny little detail of what makes that sound. So he's done he's very prolific. He makes a lot of music, and it's all very good.
Going back to those days when we used to play on the same bill and stuff, and you know, I'd chat to Ed, and I would almost, to my shame, I would almost laugh at him because he would say about these plans that he has to go and build his own studio and do this and that. And we all have pipe dreams, and I really thought it was just talk. But look at what he's done. And I've got so much respect for him.
It's incredible. He, even at the time, Big must have still been going because they were supporting Lee Scratch Perry, and Lee Scratch Perry turned up without a band, so the Big were his backing band. Like, the incredible things, and fucking all credit to him. He's a superhuman being.
Yeah, probably like James on drums deserves a mention, and Bella, the saxophone player. I can't remember the keyboard players.
Which one was the one who was it that shit themselves in the high street?
Which high street? That might make a difference.
Do you know what? I could probably find out. It's on beatmotel.com. I found all the original artwork files for Beat Motel when it was a paper zine, and and I interviewed Ed like back and forth by email, and we asked people who are punknews.co.uk forum users, if you remember those days. We all lived on there. Asked them to send in questions, and one of them was from a guy called Dagenham Dave, who you know.
I know Dagenham Dave,
and it was about shitting himself in the ice cream. I kind of want to know now, but we'll have to move on actually. So again, we've made that quite clear. That is a band I wish would reform. And I was thinking, I can't be 100% sure they haven't. So if they have, and I'm just unaware, then great.
I think they all still work together, but not under the name of the Big, I believe.
Again, another name, I'd say it's pre-internet saturation, but another name that's just fucking impossible to Google. The Big. Like, the Big what? Maximum Scar. I tried putting that on because they used to have those stickers.
That's right.
I was like that. Maximum Scar. How much Scar are we going to have? Maximum Scar.
Turn it up to 11. 11 Scar.
11 Scar, please. Right. I want to stretch my scar hole, and I'm probably not going to pull at that thread any further. Right. So here is your next choice. That, I just forgot how good that is. Who is that, Daz?
Okay, Generation X. Billy Idol on vocals, obviously.
I've literally only just realised Billy Idol and Billy Joel aren't the same person. Sadly, I'm not saying that for comic effect. That is the absolute truth. I heard some Billy Joel songs. I heard a Billy Joel song on the radio this years ago, and I never did anything about looking it up. I was like, wow. After Generation X and after White Wedding and stuff, he really changed. It just made sense in my head that he'd changed into doing these like nice ballads.
That would be so cool if they would kind of swap roles as such and do each other's songs.
Or like in a Tom Hanks film, like not Tom, one of those brain switch films.
Yeah,
Freaky Friday.
Very quickly about Billy Joel. Before he was the solo artist that he is, he was in a heavy metal type band in the early 70s. And I don't know any more than that about them, but yeah, they weren't kind of getting anywhere, but a sort of hard rock band.
Thing is, what's so stupid about my not realising is that the times are all wrong, because his ballady stuff, Billy Joel's ballady stuff's sort of early to mid 70s, isn't it? Obviously, Generation X are they like first wave of punk? Are they? What year of Generation X?
77. I think they kind of came out of a band called Chelsea, I believe.
Oh, really?
I believe so. Yeah. Again, I do like to make things up. If I don't know the facts, I will just pluck any old thing out of the air and say it.
Just doing that, yeah.
Something to do with Chelsea, yeah.
We get loads of complaints.
And SS, I think, something to do with a band called SS.
We cut these up into clips and put them on TikTok and YouTube and whatever, and we get so many comments of people going, "No, I think you'll find that you're wrong." like I posted the other day, I commented, "Look, coming to Beat Motel looking for facts is like bobbing for turds."
I saw that.
You saw that?
Yeah.
Like, what do you expect? You pay your money, you get your price. What did you pay? Nothing. Well, there you go. Fuck off.
Just enjoy it. So Generation X, I found out about them through, it wasn't Billy Idol. There was a band out in the 80s called Sigue Sigue Sputnik. And I thought that they were the best thing I'd ever heard. I really did. And they were formed by a guy called Tony James. And doing a bit of research into Tony James at the time, it turns out that he was the bass player in Generation X.
I have no idea. Well, this is getting like rock family trees. We're in danger of having facts.
No. I think what I particularly like about Generation X is a lot of the and Tony James said this himself, and I thought that's a really good point actually. And this song in particular kind of pinpoints that, in that a lot of the punk bands were trying to dismiss everything that had gone before them, looking for the bright new future. Everything's going to change. Whereas Generation X were happy. And on that song, they're singing about things from the past, which they enjoyed. Kathy McGowan and the Who and what have you. And I really like that.
I like that, and I think a lot of the bands who went on to become really interesting and make really good music slightly later on, sort of early 80s, were the ones who did love the past and did love old music. So like Replacements, absolutely obsessed with Alex Chilton and Love and bands like that. Was Alex Chilton in Love, or am I just getting confused? No. Anyway. And
Just
then
make it
Husker
up.
Du.
That's fine.
Yes, he was. He was in Love, and they sung that song about Phil.
Phil Oakes?
They sung about Phil Oakey, the surfboarder. Phil Oakey, the surfboarder who invented the sunglasses, the Oakley sunglasses.
Yeah, half of the Band-Aid single.
And of course, Band-Aid famously only start making plasters after Do They Know It's Christmas Time.
Where did all the money go?
Right, so tell us, Daz, is this a band you wish hadn't reformed, or is it a band you wish would reform?
Do you take a guess at this, or do you just want me to tell you?
I just heard what you said. Where did all the money go?
Invested in plasters and bandages.
Oh dear. Right, so come on. Do you want this band to reform?
Yes. Yes, I do. That's a very definite answer. The reason I hesitate a little bit is because they've kind of half reformed. When they were going to reform, then lockdown came along.
Oh, really?
So they didn't reform. But I believe that they are touring at the moment as Generation Sex with a couple of members of the Sex Pistols.
Ooh, I think you could be right. I think I've seen that somewhere, and if I haven't, I'll just say I have.
Yes,
so
that's the way we do things now.
What happened with Billy Idol then? Was he poached from the band, or did the band just sort of implode and he moved to America? Because he was a bona fide massive star in America.
Yeah. Do you know? I don't know why. I think I'm going to make the fact up that Billy Idol wanted a solo career.
Oh, fair enough. You know, he's in the film The Doors.
Is he?
Have you seen the film? It's not Scorsese. It was the other lad. Big famous film with Val Kilmer.
Yeah. I know the film. No, I don't think I knew that he was in it. I'm not a fan of The Doors. However,
see, that surprises me knowing you. I am surprised you're not a fan of The Doors.
Yeah, just can't quite get into them. I read the autobiography of the
drummer. The drummer's one's quite famous. Bobby Densmore. Is it Densmore?
I read one of their autobiographies, and I really enjoyed it, I must admit, to the point where I should remember which one of them it was. I think it might have been the guitarist, whoever he is. And I think his surname begins with a K, but I like to make things up. Who was it? Kruger,
something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, Billy Idol was supposed to have played a big part in the film.
Okay.
In the end, just before they started shooting, that's when he had a big motorbike accident. He was paralysed from the waist down.
Yeah.
Which he did recover from. But when it came to the filming, they basically had to rewrite a massive chunk had to rewrite a lot of the film because he was going to be a big character. He was starting his acting career, but he couldn't stand. So he is in the film, but you only ever see him from the waist up. And
right.
Knowing that now, I want to watch the film again and see if he's moving around because he must
like
just
Davros.
be. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, right,
sorry. I'm gonna no. You got there. You got there plenty quick enough. So Billy, I'm writing that down. Billy Idol is Davros. So yeah, because he just
we're going to come calling.
He'd just glide around, wouldn't he? Like
Doctor.
Oh right,
it's a nice day for a white wedding.
That is fantastic. That's going on the list. That's going on the list of my favourite things about this episode. Shit, we have only got like quarter of an hour left, so we ought to move on. So the next choice is something
Yours?
you might know, actually.
Do you not do one now?
Yeah, I'm doing. I clicked it. Nothing happened. You might not be familiar with their recorded output, but you definitely shared a stage with this band in Ipswich. Fuck knows how many times. Possibly with the Big playing as well.
Okay, I've got an idea, and I can't quite remember what they got. At first, I thought, is this? They might be Giants, but
I've never seen that in their music. But you're right.
Okay. Yes, was this a young band who were kind of on the cusp of doing something quite big? I think they might have had record labels sniffing around.
I now know who you're thinking about.
Okay.
You're thinking about Rosalita.
I am.
It's not Rosalita. Rosalita was signed to Taste Media, which is the same label as Muse, or same management company. I can't remember whether it's a label or a management company. This was a band when we first saw them. The oldest person in the band might have been 14. They were super young.
Not Waxing Captors.
Yay! Yeah, the Waxing Captors. Absolutely it is. And I think you said one of the funniest things I heard at a Waxing Captors gig, because they were so full of beans. I mean, the guts on them, the nerve in a good way, the braveness of coming into a music scene where we were never cliquey. It was always a really good scene in Ipswich, but we were certainly older than them, and we would have only been possibly late 20s at the time.
Yeah, and this was playing in pubs. I mean, just going into pubs at that age, let alone getting up and jumping around and doing your thing in front of all these. Well,
the drummer Monkey was fairly spicy as pubs go. It wasn't necessarily a nice, friendly, inclusive. Well, it wasn't an inclusive space like we're fortunate enough to have now.
I've done a gig there one night, and there was some kind of right-wing meeting going on in the other room next door. Really,
that's actually happening next door.
Happening in the same pub next door.
And the landlord just going, "Yeah, that seems all right. That seems fine." But yeah, they came on full force, and Luke, the singer, who I'm still good friends with now, he used to fling the mic stand around, and this mic stand just ended up just breaking because none of us had good gear. This is when gigs were still just backline and then everything going through 100-watt PA. Sound was terrible, and the microphone broke, and he just sort of dropped it, and somebody, it might have been Dagenham Dave, went to go pick up another mic stand and give it to Luke, and you went, "Don't give another fucking stand." Again, no malice or anything, but everyone really laughed because you were like the way you'd admonish a child, like, "Don't give him another bowl of cereal. He's already tipped the last one on the floor." Brilliant.
Yeah, I've got to admit, they had almost been erased from my memories over the years, so it's really good to hear of them again.
That album was out on Antigen Records, so Jason Whittaker's label, and partly produced, I think, by Rocky. Recorded in a really nice studio called Monkey Puzzle, where I've recorded with a couple of times with one of my bands, and it was I think that's the only time that their essence was captured really, really well. They did a lot of recordings on an 8-track, and I know that because they bought that 8-track from my band, because we bought a digital 8-track and none of us knew how to use it, so we sold it to the Waxing Captors.
Sold it to the youngsters.
We did. It still had all our shit on it. I'm sure they had to delete it all. But that album's worth looking up. I
just imagine them turning it on and listening back to it, and what they're getting is, hello, is this working? Hello?
Yeah, that's pretty much what it would have been.
That
or like
culture out there.
God, it was bad. But yeah, the album's worth looking up. I'm going to look up its name because it's got a great cover and it's got a great name. But do you want to guess whether I wish they'd reform or whether I think they shouldn't?
Okay. I don't know what any of them might be up to nowadays. I'm going to have a complete guess at the fact that you've got those memories of them then, so that you are happy with them not reforming again.
No, I think they should.
Okay.
And
complete guess. So
yeah, no, good guess. But I think they had unfinished business.
right.
I think they hit a streak where they were really, really good. Like, they got to the stage where they were just amazing live, and they were going a good long time. I'm going to send you a picture via WhatsApp of the album cover, because I think it's brilliant. And I was at Brighton the Corners a couple of years ago, and I went out for a vape, and every member of the Waxing Captors was stood there all together. And brilliant. I literally just worked out, just went, whoa, fucking hell. It's like, I thought I'd slipped back in time or something. And I wonder if there might be something coming, but we don't know. But just because they're still so young, but they basically hit university age and then went their separate ways. I mean, I think most of them have got children now, and having children is definitely a good reason to start a band and spend more time out of the house. Yeah,
well, for you, I really hope that does happen.
What do you think of the album cover?
It's great, isn't it? I don't even know how to. Yeah, it's like one of those Top of the Pops albums from the 1970s.
Exactly what it is. So it's a gentleman or a lady, I can't tell, playing a
very orange one,
a piano, and yeah, just the way they've got all the songs listed on the covers, a very nice sort of 50s or 60s, early 60s kind of nod, isn't it? But the album's worth looking up. I think it's on Bandcamp.
And it's called Pleasure, which is a really nice title to have, very friendly.
Right, so let's move on to your next choice, which is... I've just got to check my notes. It is this thing. Oh, what the fuck is that awful dog shit?
Oh, my
you could be about to tell me you love it, but can't. That vocal is...
Okay, so that's Queen.
Yeah, but why do they sound like something... If someone made a musical of Status Quo, it would sound like that.
Yep. Because there was a guy in their band called Freddie Mercury, and he died.
I mean, I know we said we're dangerously close to facts and actually breaking news. So first of all, we've got Elton John might have friends, and now I'm afraid, listeners, I'm sorry if you're hearing it from Daz for the first time. Freddie Mercury's dead.
Yeah. So there's a guy called Paul Rodgers took over the vocals for an album. John Deacon decided not to carry on. They brought in Paul Rodgers, famously of Free and Bad Company.
Is that who it was?
Yeah.
But he sounds like a West End musical guy. Like you'd hear that voice would be equally suited to being in Chitty Chitty Bang Bang or something.
Well, oddly, Queen must have decided to really go down that route, because the next guy they got in was someone called Adam Lambert, who I think is connected very much to West End type shows and stuff. So
I thought you were going to say Michael Crawford.
Such a good idea.
I'm going to write that down. Michael Crawford singing. Go on, give us an "Oh Betty" to a Queen song.
To a Queen song. I can't. I can't.
Oh man, that's going on my list. Michael Crawford is the new singer of Queen.
All we hear is, "Oh, Betty."
Oh man, we need to move on quick. So
that was the worst. If anyone does impressions, it's always Michael Crawford. I can't do a Michael Crawford impression.
I was just thinking, like, under pressure, like
no,
that'd be the bass. I almost managed to talk about Queen without. I almost managed to talk about Queen without talking about the bassist Joey Deacon. So, right, so do you want that band to reform, or should they have not reformed?
Okay, I don't know if I've misunderstood the remit here or just made up my own thing. But
Here's the theme, Daz. Nah, fuck it. I'm going to make my own theme.
I thought you wanted two bands that you wish hadn't reformed.
Yeah, no. So this is the. I don't want to let you kind of give away too much behind the scenes thing, but yeah, I needed you to choose two that you do want to reform and two that shouldn't, because then it gives us a bit of variety.
Yes. Okay.
So, I mean, unfortunately, you've already said that the first two you both want them to reform. So it's just a formality, really. Do you want Queen to carry on with Michael Crawford as their singer?
I wish they hadn't. I think they should have called it a day when Freddie Mercury passed away, when John Deacon decided to leave. Brian May, Roger Taylor. I think it would have been a better move for them and for everybody involved if they had done something like, before Queen, they had a band called Smile. They could have revitalised that. I think that would have garnered enough interest from the public. But to carry on with Queen without Freddie Mercury, the four of them, brilliant songwriters, three of them, fantastic vocalists, all brilliant musicians, and to take away 50% of that and still call yourselves Queen, I think is a travesty.
See, we could talk notable exceptions, because I was going to choose The Who, because The Who are now down to two, aren't they? But okay, so we'll move on to the next one, and it's this. I might not even play the whole thing, because I mean, I've already said that I want the first two bands to reform. So I mean, we might have lost a bit of mystique here, but I'm gonna play it anyway.
Reflection, you keep it in a safe. Use a secret combination to navel gaze all day. It's a beautiful thing. I say bye-bye. It's a beautiful thing. So I stay so high. When you say you love John Lennon, you don't want the world as one. By all means necessary. Yes, I have to sing my song. It's a
Who's that?
Okay, well, first of all, I'm just going to say that you said it, we've kind of given everything away now involving this, but I seem to be making up the rules as we go along. So
good. You understand the premise of the podcast very well.
I'm not sure who that is, but it's got a sound of some. It's kind of along the lines of The Beloved or somebody like that.
Ooh, that's really interesting. Is that from the same town?
The Beloved, The Farm, that kind of thing.
Oh, The Farm. No, actually, The Beloved and The Farm were Liverpool, weren't they? This band from Manchester. It's the Stone Roses.
Right, okay.
And the first album, well, the official first album, they did one for Rough Trade before their big famous album that wasn't released at the time. But a lot of people dislike their second album. I think the second album's not great, but it's fine. But this is from when they reformed a few years ago, and I just think it was a cash grab, and they toured a bit, made fuck knows how much money, but they released this song, and it's just a rehash of what they did on the first album. It's like they were like, no, we're not going to progress at all. The second album, where we tried to be Led Zeppelin, wasn't well received, so let's just carry on as if nothing. As if we didn't stop in 1989. And I just think they could have left it. They could have had a legacy. Having a legacy is fine. You just let it go. It's fine.
I was in their first album came out 89, 90, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I was 17, 18 years old. So the Stone Roses were everywhere around that time. To the point where it comes back to how we started this podcast, actually.
Oh, bloody hell, that sounds a bit
I almost
planned.
ran away from it because it was so popular. I almost ran away from it. I did come to appreciate the Stone Roses' first album. I think it is overhyped, to be honest. But it's easy for me to say because I think it's all right and no more than that. I think a real big letdown on that album is that one of the songs they just repeat but backwards all the way through.
Yeah,
and I think that's just such a cop out of putting an album together.
They did it on loads of singles as well. In fact, I think it came up in the last episode with standard host, with our usual host, Dr. Sam. And I thought it was interesting as a teenager. But one of the things I love about talking to you, Daz, is your perspective, because you have opinions on things. Like me, you have opinions on things that I think most other people haven't even considered. Like, sorry, but it's lazy. You've just copy and pasted and flipped it around. Lazy fuckers.
Yeah, and I don't think that they're a bad band by any stretch of the imagination. And I think that first album is essentially good, and there's some real iconic songs on there. Waterfall, I think, is...
Well, Waterfall is the song that they then do backwards.
Right. That's the one they did do backwards.
Yeah. Well, no, Waterfall's the right way round. But
yeah. Water Rise, did they call it?
Geyser, wouldn't it? It'd be a gushing geyser.
Yes.
The opposite of a waterfall. Fucking hell. Right, so this is your final choice.
Okay.
Somebody today, and I don't dig what you gotta say. So come on and say yeah. Come on and tell me twice.
So right. I'm still laughing about the new wave of pretty metal, pretty heavy metal. Right. So who was that?
So we know that's the Happy Mondays. Same time, same part of the world as Stone Roses before. Which I didn't know you was going to play. So that's a interesting thing, isn't it? Isn't that an interesting thing? Now, the thing with the Happy Mondays is, again, like the Stone Roses, I thought they were all right. I probably preferred them over the Stone Roses. And going on from there, I much preferred Black Grape to Happy Mondays.
It's the natural progression and just making things a little bit more interesting, wasn't it?
Yeah. My point with Happy Mondays and the subject of this podcast is that they did reform, and I went to see them.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, I went to see them at Norwich UEA a few years ago, and it was so disappointing. So disappointing. I think tickets were £30 at the time, and probably going back, almost 10 years ago now. I wouldn't be surprised. Maybe not quite that long, but certainly more than 5 years ago. So £30 a ticket. They played for exactly 1 hour, and there was no support act. And it was
1
just
hour for £30 seems a bit,
doesn't it?
Seems, and no support band. That seems.
Yeah, it really looked as though they weren't particularly enjoying it. So, if you were to ask me, should they or shouldn't they have reformed, I would say no, sirree, Bob. They should not have reformed.
Okay, what a shocking reveal there. I wonder. I genuinely wonder if it was Shaun Ryder was skint. He sued. It's a really bad idea. He sued his own legal firm, his law firm representing him. So they countersued and won, and they garnished like 90% of his income for fucking years until he'd paid off his bills, essentially. And there was a documentary we saw, and he was just living in a crappy little house like the one I live in, and so he may well have just needed the money, and that's fair enough. But the Shaun Ryder's gone through such a redemption sort of arc, and just in the last few years, where he's just suddenly become really interesting and genuinely funny. Not laughing at him. I mean, like, he is actually funny, and he's so self-aware. There's an episode of a thing that Bill Bailey did. He took famous people on a walk, and the one with Shaun Ryder is just one of my favourite things I think
it's great,
I've ever
isn't
seen.
it? Yeah, really interesting character with experiences, with stories to tell.
I mean, I sat and watched that with my in-laws, who obviously they got no fucking idea who Shaun Ryder was, and they thoroughly loved him by the end of it. He's just sort of become this just dude, just funny guy.
Yeah.
Right, so, I'm going to play... Sorry, do you want any more to say on that?
No, I was just going to interrupt there and say that my decision for me wishing that they hadn't have reformed isn't personal against Shaun Ryder.
Excellent. I kind of wish I'd seen them at the time. At the time, I dismissed the same way that you kind of dismissed Stone Roses. I dismissed Happy Monday. I didn't get it. I didn't get it at all, and they would say everywhere. The fact, looking back now, with the eyes of an older man, the fact that this bunch of scallies from Manchester were basing their music on an obsession with Afrobeat is just incredible. That is, wow, that's one of the most incredible cultural adjustments or cultural absorptions that I think has ever happened in music. Absolutely incredible.
Yeah, what they've done with rock and dance and influences around them at the time, I think really is very, very, very good. And just going back to seeing bands at that time, at Stone Roses, I was at Spike Island.
Oh, what?
Yeah, about
you were
2
at
years.
Spike Island.
Yeah, about 2 years ago, I went over there and had a look.
Fucking hell! It's just
It's
like
nothing
a big
to write home about.
It's
I
like
don't know what all the fuss is about.
Right. I mean, we're not gonna be able to top that for an end note. So I'm going to play a little bit of my last choice, which is this. I'm not even going to play the whole thing. That's all we need.
I know that song.
You know that song?
Yeah.
I kind of like the fact that it's not immediately in the front of your mind who it is.
No, it's not.
It's the Oasis.
It is Oasis, is it? Okay.
Yeah, ended up being a lazy choice because when I thought about a band that shouldn't have reformed, I suddenly felt like I was being really judgmental. So I just chose Oasis just because I couldn't give a fuck. I find it odd that, and this is going to get a lot of really negative comments, I think a lot of people rushing to buy Oasis tickets for knowing they were getting ripped off because they did dynamic pricing. So the price went up the more popular the tickets were, and people ended up paying £350, £400 to be at the back of a stadium behind a column being jabbed in the back of their head with a steward by a steward. And it worries me that people are doing that because they remember back to the 90s as some sort of golden era, and I have a real problem with any period in my life being as good as right now. You can't live in the past. You can't offset living to the future. Now is where happiness is. And I think people thinking going to see Oasis will make them happy and take them back to a time when they didn't have parental responsibilities, debt or mortgages is... I'm quite judgmental, actually, aren't I?
It's not going to be the case, is it? I found it very interesting what you said at the beginning of that, because it is big news that Oasis are doing this gig or these gigs or whatever they're going to do. And I didn't consider them. They crossed my mind, but I didn't consider them for, I think, exactly the same reason. I don't care. I don't care either way.
Couldn't give a fuck.
No.
Right. And on that note, I'm going to say goodbye. Do you want to say goodbye?
It's been lovely. Thank you so much for asking me to do this. I've had an absolute ball.
Did you just call me Tom?
I think so. Sorry, who are you?
Right, bye-bye.